There is yet to be a 3D Castlevania game that one would consider an unmitigated success. Unfettered by the past and given free rein to blaze its own path, Castlevania Lords of Shadow seems poised to succeed where others have faltered. Does it represent a bold new direction for the venerable franchise? Or does it fall short of its dark legacy?
Did he see his dreams? Or did he see his future blown away like leaves on the wind? These are dark times, times without hope. Men of faith claim that this is a test from God to strengthen our spirit.
You are Gabriel Belmont, a solemn knight of the Brotherhood of Light, and you're on an important mission: to stamp out the Lords of Shadow, a loose scheming confederation of powerful supernatural entities that wields untold power. Your objective is to retrieve a powerful artifact whilst putting down the Lords and their servants, assisted by your mentor Zobek and the old god Pan, and occasionally advised by the spirit of your dead wife.
There is something else. A shadow is on my mind.
Lords of Shadow eschews the sort of over-the-top goofiness we've come to associate with the series for a more earnest story altogether. Don't expect any continuity with the series, and don't be surprised to have your expectations turned on their heads.
My name is Belmont.
I know who you are.
Not surprisingly, considering the all-star cast, the game is believably acted, lending substantial weight to a story that gets downright biblical before all is said and done. Prepare yourself for a wholly unexpected conclusion that's sure to draw some interesting questions about the future of Castlevania.
I congratulate you on your victory. But these fellows were not so fortunate.
If you've been playing action games for the past few years, chances are you'll be on familiar turf in Lords of Shadow. The game is linear for the most part, though some stages will require an inordinate amount of wandering, and the general theme is forward momentum. Think God of War instead of Metroidvania. You can revisit stages to collect power-ups as your range of mobility increases, but you're never required to do so. The game is undeniably at its best when there's little ambiguity as to what you're supposed to do next. During these moments, you're free to revel in the thunderous combat and take in the stunning sights. Seldom is the experience that focused, however. A substantial portion of Lords of Shadow involves exploration and traversal, and it fails to give you the tools to effectively do this. You'll spend a good bit of time hopelessly lost or stuck. In some cases, like when all likely paths are bound by invisible walls, or when the camera fails to give you a proper view of the environment, the inclusion of an in-game map or waypoint system would have remedied this. In others, inconsistent traversal mechanics are to blame. While rappelling, you're sometimes able to bound off the wall onto another surface, but not always. The same is true with wall walking. Jumps are often hard to gauge and shimmying surfaces difficult to discern, as if the environment itself were mockingly daring you to figure out where to go next. All too frequently, the price for testing these arbitrary limits is a plummeting death. For a game in which experimentation often seems the only viable means forward, this is exceedingly frustrating. Puzzles are laid on thick, and while there are a few genuinely interesting ones, they most often feel like mere roadblocks. Luckily, the game provides solutions to a majority of the puzzles, providing you're willing to forfeit an experience reward for solving them. On the minus side, your definition of puzzle will often differ from the game's, forcing you to fend for yourself during some of the most obtuse scenarios. Clock Tower Crank Puzzle, we're looking at you. It's often too easy to lose sight of what Lords of Shadow does right. The boss fights are stupendous as a rule, replete with variety and stirringly cinematic in presentation. They're enough to make you forgive the handful of Titan battles, which, in spite of their epic scale, boil down to rote memorization. Lords of Shadow is a long game that takes you to some cool, unexpected places. You'll spend only a fraction of the experience cooped up in a castle. Given that its length can approach 20 hours, though, you'll come away wishing that it was more thoughtfully put together. For a game that thrives on its simplest elements and all too often stumbles on its feet. If there's one aspect of Lords of Shadow that's unquestionably well wrought, it's the fighting. The Combat Cross is an intriguing weapon, and though you wish that they'd gone a little farther with the concept, the auxiliary systems in place complement it in such a way that you'll never feel like you're lacking for options. Gabriel's move list is expandable. You purchase moves with points you earn by killing enemies and solving puzzles, and the system is expansive enough to keep you upgrading throughout the whole game. Some upgrades are pretty workmanlike. You'll purchase quite a few single-hit extensions of bread-and-butter combos. Others, like the Light and Shadow ultimate attacks, are very well out there. Magic adds a welcome bit of variety to the underlying systems. Early on, you get access to Light and Shadow magic, which you can activate at will and replenish by slaying enemies. Attacking with Light active will replenish your health, doing so with Shadow buffs your damage. More importantly though, Light and Shadow act as modifiers in a variety of situations. Some combos can only be executed while under the influence of one or the other, and the properties of certain sub-weapons are substantially altered when used with magic active. Nothing makes a sloppy encounter more manageable than a light-infused vial of holy water. Combat in general feels tactile and impactful. You're motivated to pay attention not only because the feedback is so convincing, but because the systems in place reward careful play. Even when it comes to boss fights, Gabriel's counter ability yields dividends when properly utilized, allowing you to rack up the combo meter for maximum magic yield. Having some light gauge at your disposal for some of the touchier fights can mean the difference between success and failure. The beast riding mechanics stick out as superfluous when compared to the rest of the systems. Whenever you encounter a monster you can ride, rest assured that an obstacle that only a beast can surmount isn't too far ahead. And if for any reason you dismount before reaching said obstacle, get ready to hunt down and subdue another beastie. While there's no shortage of combat in Lords of Shadow, the encounters definitely start to feel less momentous as the game wears on. All too often, you'll feel like the horde of enemies attacking you is there merely to prevent you from reaching that crank you were about to turn. In your mind, you'll have no doubt that the combat belongs right at the forefront of the experience. It's too bad that the game seems to forget this partway through. Lords of Shadow certainly looks the part of a no-expense-spared reboot of one of gaming's most storied franchises. The game holds its own alongside some of the most accomplished graphical powerhouses out there, rendering a horrific, brilliantly imagined world peopled by convincing characters, human or otherwise. Some of the vistas are truly stunning, and while the performance buckles under the weight on more than a couple of occasions, it's hard to begrudge it the details. The cast is stellar. Robert Carlyle does justice to the solemn, determined Gabriel, and Patrick Stewart will have you questioning the motives of the slightly menacing Zobek till the very end.
Good luck, my friend. May we be granted victory.
The soundtrack hits all the notes you'd expect of a Castlevania game, though it isn't overbearing during sequences where it wouldn't be appropriate. Expect some classic tunes to show up in surprising places.
A force so powerful that all reason becomes blind to it, blind to all things, even the truth.
The way that Lords of Shadow ends leaves little doubt that we've yet to see the last of this daring new vision for Castlevania. Were it not for the questionable pacing, this initial outing would have been a brilliant debut, as the fundamentals are certainly there. If you're determined to experience it for yourself, rest assured that there are some great moments in this new Castlevania. Just be prepared to endure some tedium in getting there.